What's going on, everyone? Magnus Carlsen Invitational, round 7. Magnus Carlsen with the white pieces against Mamedyarov, a former 2800 rated player with the black pieces. Let's just jump into the game. We have e4, c5, a Sicilian, knight to f3, e6, d4, c takes d4, knight takes on d4. So far, very normal moves. Knight to f6, putting pressure on the e4 pawn. Magnus protects with knight to c3, knight to c6, the 4 knights variation of the Sicilian defense, and after a3, bishop to e7, now we transpose into the Taimanov variation of the Sicilian. Here Magnus chooses a very combative approach and he plays f4, weakening his king side a little bit, but he's planning to use his 2 advanced pawns on e4 and f4 to create some weaknesses and create some attack on the king side here. Mamedyarov castles here. I would have preferred the move d6 instead, preventing e5 from happening. But okay, he wanted his king side safer, so he ended up castling here. Magnus goes for e5, and after knight to d5, we have a trade of knights. And notice now that the pawn structure for black has been damaged. Here Magnus continues with knight takes on c6 and b takes on c6. This is a very good approach by Mamedyarov, and I really much like this move for many reasons. First of all, it opens the b file for the rook to attack. It is also black's move. He has the time, so he can go ahead now and actually play bishop c5, which he did play in the game, preventing the white king from ever castling kingside, at least for the moment. Now, why was b6 a lot superior than d takes on c6? If we go back and move here, if pawn takes here, now Magnus is going to have this 4 against 3 majority here on the king side. And after moves like bishop to d3, castle king side, queen to h5, he's just going to go ahead and play f5, f6 with a very strong attack on the king. So this, although it looks nicer, your pawn structure is not damaged. This 4 against 3 with the bishop coming to d3, the queen to h5, and the f5, f6 push is very dangerous for black. So I very much like what Mamedyarov played in this position with b takes on c6 instead. So here the game continued, bishop to d3, Magnus develops the bishop and puts it in the correct diagonal, attacking the king right away. Here Mamedyarov continues with bishop to c5, a very strong move. Like I said, now he prevents Magnus from castling on the next move. So Carlsen instead has to play this queen to f3, preparing to go bishop to e3, getting in the way of the diagonal. Mamedyarov continues with d6. He wants to open up the game. Now, if white here takes on d6, then rook to e8 check is going to be a disaster for Magnus, so he cannot do this. So instead, he plays bishop to e3. And again, Mamedyarov plays another very strong move. He takes advantage of the fact that this bishop that was down here is no longer protecting the pawn on b2, and he goes for rook to b8. Here, Magnus continues with b4. The bishops get traded, and Mamedyarov again attacks Magnus right away, and he plays a5. Here in this position, Magnus went ahead, he put his king in safety. He needed to get it out of the center of the board as soon as possible because this position is about to open up and he didn't want his king to be there. So a takes on b4 happened, a takes on b4, pawn takes on e5, f takes on e5, and here Mamedyarov was able to win a pawn with rook takes on b4. But Magnus gets a lot of counterplay. He gets this move, rook to a8, pinning this bishop here to the queen. And as I'm going to show you in some lines, this is very difficult to get away from this pin. For example, if here black decides to go for a move like maybe queen to c7, putting pressure on this pawn, let's say we move this king out of the way here to h1. And if you decide to get this bishop out now, well, this loses to bishop takes on h7. This king has to move, and when it captures here, we can go ahead and take the rook. We will win an exchange. So it is very difficult to break this pin at the moment. So what did Mamedyarov do? Well, he played g6. Now this bishop is no longer taking on h7, and at the same time, you create a square for your king to move to g7 just in case. Here, Magnus found another pretty resource to continue the game and continue his advantage. Here he played this move e6. The idea is that he wants to, right now this bishop is protected by 2 pieces and he wants to eliminate one of the defenders. So pawn has to take, although the bishop cannot take because it's pinned, remember. Pawn takes, rook takes, and here the queen has to take. If the king takes here, well, we just win the game with queen to c5. There's a check. We're going to pick this up, and if queen to e7, we take the bishop and then the rook, and then the queen, sorry, and it will be game over. Instead, Mamedyarov goes for queen takes on a fate, g3 by Magnus. He had calculated that he's not getting checkmated down here. Rook to b1, king to g2. This bishop protects the square on f1, so the queen is not checkmating us right away. e5, Mamedyarov has a very clear idea. He wants to go bishop to h3 check, and after we take the bishop, he wants to take our rook on a8. So what does Magnus do? Well, he plays g4. Again, this bishop cannot capture this pawn because it is pinned. We'll take the queen and win the game. But here, Mamedyarov completely collapsed, and he played this move e4. And after Magnus plays bishop to a6, Mamedyarov was thinking, okay, I have a pawn. I'm just gonna play two pieces against the queen and the extra pawn, and maybe I can hold. But he missed a very clear idea. After bishop takes, rook takes. Now there is this nasty check at the end. It is check to the king, and we're also picking up this bishop. And Mamedyarov in this position resigned. A very beautiful game by Magnus. He shows again that he can win from a dead even position by sacrificing material and creating chances for himself. Hope you guys liked the video. As always, stay safe, have a great day, show respect to your opponent. See you on the next one.